He sat in his royal chamber, the city of gold stretching beneath him. The sun was a crown upon the horizon, but his heart felt a shadow. No palace could illuminate. He had heard of her patience, of the years she had waited. And tonight, the weight of that waiting bore down on him. He would not write her a letter. He would not send another messenger. No, he would go himself. The decision was simple. To see her, to speak to her, to make her understand that every moment of her wait had been etched into the rhythm of his heart. He remembered the days she had waited, the evenings filled with hope, the mornings of silence, the prayers she whispered for him in secret, and he had wandered, not because he didn't care, but because destiny tests hearts before it grants them peace. Tonight, he would end the waiting. Tonight, he would honor her courage with the truth of his soul. He rose, dressed in simplicity, leaving behind the royal jewels and gold. He would not be a prince today. He would be a man carrying years of regret and a heart full of devotion. The city slept, but he walked through its streets, each step a poem, each breath a prayer. As he neared the outskirts, the gardens and fountains gave way to the quiet village where she lived. He paused. No royal announcement, no herald, only the moon and stars, witnessing a prince becoming a lover. Once again, he thought of her face, of the way her eyes had never begged, never demanded, never doubted. Her patience had been his mirror, reflecting the man he wanted to be. And tonight, he would kneel at that mirror, not to beg forgiveness, but to offer a heart that had learned its lesson. He knocked gently, not on her door, but on the threshold of her life. And the wind carried a whisper of his own soul. You waited, and I am finally here. He entered the small courtyard, where the jasmine still clung to the walls. It sat heavy with memories. She was there, standing by the fountain, hands folded, eyes reflecting, a patience that had endured lifetimes. For a moment, he could not speak. The words he had rehearsed felt too small, too weak, against the magnitude of her waiting. She looked up, and their eyes met, not as prince and subject, not as king and commoner, but as two souls who had survived time and distance to find each other again. Hamdan, she whispered. The single name carried more weight than 1,000 crowns. It was forgiveness and accusation, all at once. He bowed slightly, not out of protocol, but reverence. I have come, he said softly, not as a prince, but as a man who finally understands the gift of your patience. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. The silence itself spoke volumes. He took a cautious step closer. The courtyard seemed suspended in time. Even the fountain stilled, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Every day you waited, every prayer you offered silently, I carried them with me. Every decision I made, every step I took, it was with your name in my heart. She did not move, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to shed. I feared I would never reach you, he continued. But fate guided me through deserts, storms, and countless nights of longing. Back to you. He extended his hand, not for her touch, but as a symbol of respect, a promise that he would never take her patience for granted again. Her fingers hovered over his, hesitating, weighing the years of silence, the weight of hope that had been pressed upon her shoulders. Finally, she placed her hand lightly in his. It was not a surrender. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. Hamdan, she said softly, you speak with words that my heart has known. For years, But actions are the proof of truth. He nodded, understanding that words alone could never repay the devotion of a waiting heart. He drew a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill his lungs. Then let my life be my proof, he said. Let every moment I spend by your side honor the years you waited. If you choose to forgive, I will spend every day showing you the depth of my love in ways words could never capture. She looked at him, the moonlight dancing in her hair, and for the first time in years, her shoulders relaxed. The silence was no longer empty. It was a dialogue of hearts and souls, understood without uttering a single word. He knew this was only the beginning. The waiting had ended, but the journey of earning her trust, of building their shared eternity, had just begun. And as they stood there, hand in hand, he whispered into the quiet night, "You waited too long, but I promise I will make every second worth it." The following days were not filled with grand gestures, nor with royal proclamations, for Sheikh Hamdan knew that true love is proven in quiet devotion, in consistency, in presence. He rose each morning, before the city stirred, carrying with him a heart that had learned patience from the one who had waited. He tended to her garden, not because he was ordered, but because her world deserved care, just as her heart had cared for him all those years. They shared silent breakfasts, their eyes speaking words that lips could never form. Every smile, every glance, was a confirmation that waiting had been honored. "Do you remember," he asked one morning, "the first night I came back?" She nodded, her fingers brushing against his hand. "I felt your soul before I felt your words. And I waited, knowing you would return not as a prince, but as the man who understood the value of patience." Hamdan bowed his head, a tear escaping despite his pride. "You taught me the truest lesson," he said softly. "Love is not about possession. It is about respect, honor, and the courage to wait." Days became weeks, weeks became months, and each moment he spent with her was a poem in motion. He listened to her stories, to the small joys she had hidden, the grief she had endured, and he never interrupted, never rushed, never asked for more than she could give. He understood that her waiting was not a debt to be repaid with grandeur, but a trust to be cherished forever. One evening, as the sun painted the palace walls gold, he led her to the balcony overlooking the gardens. "Every flower here," he said, "has grown knowing your patience. Every tree, every fountain, every stone is a witness to the love you have given." She looked at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips, and for the first time, she allowed herself to fully rest in the presence of his love. "Hamdan," she whispered, "you honor me not with words, but with life itself." He held her hands in his, and in that embrace, no royalty existed, no grandeur, only two souls who had waited, and finally had found each other. Night after night, they would sit beneath the stars, not speaking of the past, but acknowledging it. "Every tear I shed," she said softly, "was for you. But now I shed none, for you are here, and your heart at last matches mine." Hamdan kissed her forehead gently, a silent vow of devotion. "I will spend my life ensuring that every heartbeat you have waited for beats in harmony with mine." Even the palace seemed to bow to their renewed love. Servants whispered of their quiet devotion, and the courtiers noticed how the prince, once distracted by duty, now carried the serenity of a man who had learned what it means to truly cherish. Yet Hamdan's focus was never the applause. It was her smile. It was the peace in her eyes. It was the quiet understanding that waiting, though long and difficult, had been worth every second. As weeks turned into months, he wrote a final message, not on paper, but in action. Patience is not forgotten. Loyalty is not ignored. And love, if true, outlasts every test. It was a promise to her, to himself, to the world. You waited too long, he said one evening, and I was late. But now I am here, completely, entirely, for all the days we have ahead. The seasons changed, but the love between them remained untouched by time. Hamdan no longer walked the corridors of the palace as a prince alone. He walked with her, side by side, every gesture a testament to the life they had both waited for. He remembered the years of absence, the nights she had spent hoping, and he now understood that devotion is measured not in gifts, but in presence. Each morning, he would awaken beside her, watch her eyes flutter open, and whisper, "The world may demand kings, but I only need you." She would smile, the weight of decades lifting from her shoulders, because he finally carried it for her. He did not need grand proclamations. He did not seek admiration. The proof of his love was in the simple acts, bringing her tea at dawn, walking with her through the palace gardens, listening to her stories, celebrating her silences. Every moment was a pledge, every word a covenant. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Hamdan led her to the fountain where they had first reunited. He knelt, not as a prince, but as a man who had learned humility through love. "I have no treasure greater than this moment," he said. "No crown more precious than your trust. You waited too long, and now I am here to ensure that your patience becomes our eternity." Tears glistened in her eyes, but this time, they were not for sorrow. They were for the culmination of hope, for the validation of every prayer she had whispered. In quiet desperation, days flowed into weeks, weeks into months, and Hamdan's message was clear. Love is not just a word spoken. It is a life lived in honor of the heart that waited. He attended to her needs, protected her dignity, and made every act a reflection of his unwavering commitment. "The world may see a king," he said softly, "but I see only a woman who held my heart while I wandered through the storms of life. You are my compass, my anchor, my eternal home." At night, they would sit beneath the stars, his arm around her, her head on his shoulder. "You waited," he whispered, "and I was late, but I will spend every day proving that love is worth the wait, that devotion can outlast the years, that hearts, when true, never stray from one another." She closed her eyes, savoring the presence of a man who finally understood the meaning of patience, the depth of endurance, and the sanctity of commitment. Hamdan knew that life was fleeting, but love like theirs, was eternal. "Every breath I take," he promised, "every decision I make, every sunset we watch together, is a testament to the love that waited and endured." The palace, the city, the world, all faded away in those quiet moments, leaving only the purity of two hearts that had survived time and longing. Even years later, when history would speak of kings and queens, their story would remain a silent legend of devotion, a message for all who wait, and a promise that love, if true, can bridge any distance, heal any wound, and honor every silent prayer. The morning sun spilled gold across the palace walls, casting a light that seemed to celebrate the reunion of hearts long separated. Hamdan stood before her. No crown, no royal mantle, only a man whose heart had been forged by the patience of the one he loved. You waited, he said softly, through years that tried both your faith and your courage, and I am here to promise that every moment of waiting will be honored for the rest of our lives. Her eyes glistened, a reflection of the countless tears she had held back, and now she let them flow, not as sorrow, but as the purest joy. They walked through the palace gardens, hands intertwined, each step a silent vow. Every flower, every tree, every stone, Hamdan whispered, bears witness to your devotion, and I vow, as long as I breathe, to ensure your heart never waits in vain again. She smiled, the weight of decades lifting, because the man who had wandered, lost in duty and destiny, was now entirely hers. Present, devoted, unshakable. He led her to a quiet courtyard, where the fountain sang, and the jasmine perfumed the air. I cannot promise the world, he said, but I can promise you, every heartbeat I have, every sunrise I witness, every breath I take, will honor the love you nurtured, through patience, hope, and faith. Her hands rested in his, their fingers interlacing, as if sealing a covenant older than time itself. Even in silence, their hearts spoke volumes. Every glance, every gentle touch, was a declaration of commitment. We may walk through life surrounded by gold, yet it is your trust, your patience, and your unwavering love that make me the richest man alive, he said softly, and I will spend every day proving this truth. Seasons changed, children grew, and the palace echoed with laughter and life. But through it all, Hamdan never let a single day pass without showing her the respect, devotion, and love she had earned. Through years of quiet waiting, he wrote letters not to be delivered, but as reminders to himself that love is not fleeting. It is cultivated, cherished, and honored daily. Years later, when the story of their lives was told, people spoke not of crowns, nor of riches, but of the man who humbled himself before love, and the woman whose patience became legend. You waited too long, Hamdan whispered one evening, and I was late. But now I am here, and I promise, for all our days, to make your patience my sacred duty. And under the vast expanse of sky, they held each other, not as prince and woman, not as king and subject, but as two souls, whose love had endured every test, every storm, every silence. As the sun set behind distant hills, Hamdan spoke his final vow. Even when we are old, when the world forgets us, when stories fade into whispers, know this, my heart will remain yours. Your waiting was never in vain, and my life will be proof that love, if true, is eternal. The woman smiled, finally free from the weight of waiting, because the man she loved had arrived, not just in body, but in soul, in heart, in every promise kept. And so their story became a legend, not of wealth or throne, but of devotion, patience, and the unwavering truth that love, when honored, transcends time, distance, and every obstacle the world may place. You waited too long, he said one last time, but I will spend every moment proving it was worth it. And under the starlit sky, two hearts beat as one, forever.